that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. So lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is George Harvey and Tom Fennell, the famous Tom Fennell, presenting Energy Week for you today. The day we're recording this is the 2nd of March, and we're doing the last week's news, which means we're starting on Thursday, the 23rd of February. Every day I go to the internet and spend about 3 or 4 hours looking at news relating to energy and climate change. And I keep a blog, geoharvey.com. You can go there and read these news reports we're going to be commenting on in more detail. I'll try to update the date of the material that we're reading about, so you can click on the calendar at geoharvey.com and go to that date to find the article.
Yeah, well, sometimes these articles are in depth and very interesting sometimes. So,
yeah, they are. Sometimes.
If I can remember, I'll mention it, because you might want to check it out, because we could spend the whole session talking about sometimes just one of these things.
We could indeed, and I think we will one of these days. But should we start on this?
Well, yeah, I have a note that I made to myself that's here, which is just interesting. We've talked about graphene and the new carbon, new forms of carbon. Well, it turns out this is very conductive.
Yes.
Okay.
The most conductive material known.
The most conductive material, and I looked it up.
For both electricity and heat.
Well, I was just looking at the electricity part of it, but I'll take your word for it. But if they set graphene at 100% conductivity, which is arbitrary, right?
Yeah.
Silver is 63% of that.
Wow, that's high.
Copper is 60.
Yeah.
Gold is 40, and aluminum is 35.
And we make wires out of aluminum.
Oh yeah.
For electricity. Now this stuff is highly conductive for heat as well.
Yeah.
Many times is conductive. I was amazed, because I never would have thought that diamonds are so conductive of heat, but they are.
They are, yeah. Diamonds are.
And I had a friend who used.
You're not going to make cables out of diamonds.
No, you're not. But I had a friend who was a jeweler, who said, there's a reason why they call diamonds ice, and it's because they feel like ice. If you're in cold weather,
they suck the heat out of you.
They suck the heat out of you.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Okay, we should probably start. Our first item is from CNBC. We have a picture here.
Picture here.
This is a picture.
Nice picture.
Isn't that a nice picture? It's a picture of a river in Nepal.
And it says small-scale hydropower is changing lives in Nepal.
In Nepal.
And apparently this picture is a small-scale hydropower.
Yeah. In Nepal, some communities are looking to harness energy water produces with micro-hydropower systems. According to the Nepal Micro-Hydropower Development Association, that's a mouthful, over 3,300 micro-hydro plants are providing energy to villages around the country. In many places, impact has been significant for the villagers.
Well, this is an idea that we could very usefully borrow here in Vermont.
We could indeed.
There are many, many streams that will give you significant micro-hydro.
Yeah.
You could probably put in a half a dozen between Marlborough and Brattleboro in the Whetstone Brook.
Yes.
Each one of which would be using the same water over
and over again. Yes, I know. And one of the things that we should mention about this is there are a lot of different kinds of hydropower, and micro-hydropower does not necessarily have to alter the environment that it's in.
No, you could have a run-of-the-river turbine sitting in the river, and nobody knows it's there.
Yeah.
Unless some guy with a motorboat catches his anchor on it.
Well, yeah. Hopefully it would be sited in such a way that wouldn't happen. But microhydro, we had, what was the name?
You're thinking the same thing I'm thinking.
Little Green Hydro was the name of the company.
One of our very earliest shows.
That's right.
And a guy had a tiny hydro plant.
Tiny hydro plant.
And he was powering his barn with it.
Yeah, and fish fry would not get caught in this thing.
Yeah, because it was really gentle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are ways, you know.
There are ways. Our next item is from Clean Technica.
Oh, this is a bad one.
Yeah, well.
6,648 spills from fracked oil and gas wells in just 4 states over a decade.
Yeah.
6,000!
That's like 665 spills a year. That's almost 2 every day. And that's just 4 states. And I want to point out
the 4 states they looked at.
Yeah, in the years from 2005 to 2014, there were at least 6,648 spills at hydraulically fractured oil and gas wells in just 4 states where fracking is done, according to analysis published in the journal Environmental Science and Technology. The states that were in the study were New Mexico, Colorado, North Dakota, and Pennsylvania. I want to point out Oklahoma wasn't part of the study.
But that's just an accident, I think. I don't think this was twisted or anything.
I don't think it was, but they just picked 4 states. They couldn't
and here's
pick
Oklahoma with earthquakes.
Yeah.
They haven't had an earthquake for 200 years, and all of a sudden they have 200 earthquakes.
In truth, they used to have earthquakes on average about one every 10 months that you could feel. Someplace in Oklahoma, obviously they wouldn't be felt everywhere. But now they're having about 3 a day. And they are officially traced to fracking.
It's interesting here. Roughly 50% of the spills identified occurred in relation to the storage and transport via pipelines.
Yes. We've got messy infrastructure.
And here's another takeaway. Negligence seems to be likely to be a primary cause of spills at wells.
Yes, well, that's hardly a surprise.
That's something else again.
That was from Clean Technica. Our next item is from Cleveland.com.
First Energy Corporation to close or sell its nuclear power plants.
This is a theme that we keep coming back to. And it just goes on and on and on. First Energy, based in Akron, Ohio, made it clear that it's leaving the competitive power plant business, closing or selling all of its plants, including its nuclear plants, by the middle of next year. Closing the plants, which would probably take several years, would also have little impact on customer bills or power supplies. What's happening here is we're seeing a paradigm shift, and this paradigm shift applies to all kinds of power, including oil. And by the way, there was an interesting item in the news today. We won't have it there were 2 good items in the news today. We won't have them in this week, but I might just mention them so people will know they're coming next week. One of them is the city of Beijing is banning the use of fossil fuels powered taxi cabs.
Okay, wow.
They're replacing 66,000 taxi cabs with electric vehicles.
Electric cabs.
The other one, though, and it has to do with this particular thing. Shell Oil, Royal Dutch Shell, is now the 4th large oil and gas company, that has left the Canadian tar sands.
Is that so?
Yeah.
We'll be talking a little bit about Shell later on.
And what's happening here is that we are seeing, I think, the coal industry has collapsed. It's basically just
it's not because of renewables.
Well, it's partly because of renewables, but now the oil and gas
is killing it.
The oil and gas industry is collapsing.
Yeah.
This is the hand that's writing on the wall, and here we see it collapsing because the plants that these are thermal plants they're talking about. They're plants that use oil or gas or nuclear power, and they generate their power using thermal operations, which means they've basically got a zillion-gallon tea kettle, and they're bringing it up to a boil, and it takes a long time to do that. And they are being picked off, I think, more and more. I mean, First Energy is closing its gas-powered plants as well. They're closing all of their plants.
Well, First Energy owns the generating stations.
Yes.
But they don't distribute the energy in the state, in this particular
Which
state.
means they're going out of business.
Basically, yeah. Well, there's a backstory here. This may all be a scam. They're looking for subsidies.
Yes, they are looking for subsidies.
And they're trying to scare the hell out of everybody.
We've seen that before, too. But, the Cleveland.com article says it will have little impact on power supplies or customer bills. That's what it says.
There's enough sources of power out there without them.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Okay.
Wow.
Should we go on?
There's a quick takeaway here.
Okay.
This is a comment on the article by one of the readers.
Okay.
It will be a lot cheaper to close these rust buckets down than try to recover from a meltdown.
Oh, that's true.
The clock is ticking.
Yeah, but we've got other problems with gas-powered plants and coal-powered plants, and maybe we should. I don't know. I was going to say we should gasify Donald Trump's hair and see what we can get out of that. I'm not bald by accident. I did this on purpose. Okay, so
there was a comedian a long time ago.
What's that?
There was a stand-up comedian on TV a long time ago, and part of his shtick was to let my hair grow long and brush it over.
Well, somebody was saying that they said that Donald Trump's head. What was he wearing on his head? It's the gopher from Caddyshack.
Oh, is that what it is?
Okay, we're up to Friday, February 24th.
Got a picture
and we have a picture here of what happens when you rely on the Colorado River for your livelihood.
Well,
Well,
this is a rather extreme picture, but
yeah, it probably sank. It wasn't worth anything anyway.
This is the headline here. Colorado River flows will continue falling rapidly as anthropogenic climate change continues.
Yeah, well, this is from Clean Technica. In the years 2000 to 2014, the Colorado River flows declined to about 81% of the 20th century average. Researchers found that the higher temperatures in the region since 2000 are responsible for between 1/6 and 1/2 of the river flow reductions since the year 2000. 40 million people rely on the river for their survival.
Well, this is pretty interesting. I mean, for one thing, there's two very large reservoirs that generate power.
Yes.
Outside of Las Vegas, Lake Mead.
Yes.
We've seen pictures of that.
Yep.
And the other thing that I checked yesterday, the Colorado River no longer reaches the Gulf of California.
Actually, it's been that way for a long time.
It has been that way.
And the Mexicans have been very upset about this.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they're going to say, well, you can build a wall if you'll give us our river back.
That sounds like a fair trade.
Yeah, it does. Okay.
Here's the takeaway here. Many other regions of the world will be facing a similar situation as the southwestern U.S. and northern Mexico over the coming century with regard to water scarcity.
Well, water is a problem. And, one of the things that I remember we talked about maybe a year ago was a 2,400 megawatt coal-burning power plant in India that stopped producing power because it couldn't get water because the canal feeding it went dry.
Went dry, yep. That's happening.
And, that's a problem.
And there's a geopolitical outcome coming from these, not just this one, this mass migration, increasing levels of conflict and everything.
Oh, maybe we should put the wall back. Let the Mexicans have their dry river and put up the wall.
Well, it's ironic that a lot of that migration is coming because the little small Mexican and Central American farmers can't compete with the American agribusiness. So they're having to close down their plant, their farm, and they have no livelihood.
Yeah. And we've got
you don't think about
pirates off the coast of Somalia who are there because the fishing has been destroyed.
Yeah.
They've had to turn to fishing. Okay, we're up to an article from CNN.
Well, this is quite, I don't know if this is even quite current because it seems to be changing almost daily.
It's always changing, but this was
Dakota
current.
Access Pipeline protest site is cleared.
The main Standing Rock protest camp near the Dakota Access Pipeline was cleared Thursday, a day after a deadline to leave the plant, the area expired, according to authorities. There were arrests, but no major conflict as police did not enter the camp. About 100 protesters left voluntarily. Protesters chanted, waved flags, and played drums as they left. And, you know, as I read this, I'm thinking, Donald Trump signed executive orders allowing Keystone XL.
He just countermanded what Obama had done.
Yeah.
Obama didn't even shut everything down. He just put them on hold.
Yeah. And
let's look at this.
Yeah. And the Keystone XL, again, you know, if the big oil companies are not going to extract oil from the tar sands, then Keystone XL has no purpose.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and
by the way, do you know what the X stands for in XL?
Crossing the country.
Export.
Yeah, there you go.
We're not even going to use this oil.
The oil just crosses the United States. The only thing that we get out of it is the possibility of oil spills.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Okay, that was from CNN. Our next item is from Mid-Hudson News.
Well, we're coming a little bit closer to home here.
A little bit.
Study finds Indian Point power can be replaced.
I could have told him that. You could have told him that. Anybody who watches this show could have told him that. Riverkeeper and the Natural Resources Natural Resources Defense Council claim a new study it commissioned puts to rest any lingering doubts over replacement power and shows that the closure of the Indian Point nuclear plant can be done clean and green without big increases in electric bills. Indian Point's power units will be offline in 2021. My guess is that shutting this plant down and replacing it with green power will actually reduce the bills.
You're probably right.
I mean, that's the experience.
That's an expensive plant to run.
Nuclear power is expensive.
But this is among nuclear plants, it's expensive.
Is particularly expensive, yeah. And it's there's only about 4 blocks of New York City, 3 blocks, something like that, at the very southernmost tip of Staten Island that are more than 50 miles from that plant. And when Fukushima melted down, the U.S. said to American citizens, don't go within 50 miles.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's easy to look at it in retrospect, but putting these plants here when they did was very risky, very foolhardy. It was not, how would you say it, it wasn't responsible.
Well, they had problems at the time. Remember, we're talking about what we've got here in Indian Point. Yeah, it's old technology. Yeah. And old technology included old transmission technology.
Yeah.
And old transmission technology meant that you wanted to have the power source near your city. So
from that standpoint, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But it was still irresponsible.
Right. The 30 miles that they did was the compromise between safety and economics.
Wow.
And they knew it at the time. That's why they did it.
I remember when I was a kid, Indian Point was a park.
Yep.
And they had a huge swimming pool.
Yes.
It was an all-day thing. I mean, I remember taking the subway downtown.
Yep.
Going out to the river, walking out to the river, getting on a boat
that went to Indian Point.
Took us up to Indian Point.
Yeah.
The whole thing was an adventure.
Yeah. I had 2 friends back around it was about 40 years ago.
I had 2 friends 40 years ago.
Did you?
Yeah.
I had 2 friends who were nuclear engineers, and they told me, meltdown? No. Actually, one of them, the younger of the 2, said, meltdown? No, it'll never happen. Not during your lifetime. The chance of a nuclear power plant melting down is 1 in 10,000 in any given year. And, you say, okay, so if we have 1,000 nuclear power plants in the world, and the chance of one melting down is 1 in 10,000 in any given year, that means the chances are that one of those plants is going to melt down every 10 years.
You're twisting words here.
No, I'm not. And it turns out that out of 500 nuclear power plants, we've had 11 meltdowns.
Yeah, we've had quite a few.
And most people know about Chernobyl, and they know about 3 Mile Island, and they know about the 3 at Fukushima Daiichi, but they don't know about Chapel Cross, Yoslevska Bohunice, 2 at Saint-Laurent in France.
Didn't something melt down around Chicago?
Yeah, there was Detroit. There was Fermi 1.
Fermi, yeah.
And then there was SRE just outside of Los Angeles in Simi Valley. And, you know, we've had 11 of them, which means that the actual figure was not 1 in 10,000. It was more like 1 in 1,600. And if you went to a person, which means that during the lifetime of the plant, there's approximately a 2.5% chance that the plant is going to melt down. So you go into a town and you say, I want to build a nuclear power plant at your town, and say to the people, don't worry about it.
It's going to be too cheap to meter.
Yeah, and there's only a 2.5, there's only a 1 in 40 chance that it's ever going to melt down.
Yeah, 1 in 40.
Right. It's not going to be received very well. Okay, we are up to Saturday, February 25th.
A nice picture coming up.
A nice picture. A picture of rhodium nanoparticles. Okay. How about that? This is from Clean Technica.
This is an interesting article.
Yes, it is.
This is cutting edge technology.
Yeah, it is.
In quotes here, fabulous. A fabulous precious metal kickstarts energy to fuel system.
Scientists.
And what happened to the picture there?
What happened to the picture? Why don't you get it up?
That's my fault.
That's your fault.
My goodness, there it is.
There you go. Scientists at Duke University have used rhodium for a solar-powered system that converts carbon dioxide into methane, which can be used as a replacement for natural gas. The idea could enable capturing waste gas from industrial operations and converting it into fuel. Rhodium is a rare element used in the jewelry trade.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people don't understand what a catalyst is, and maybe we should kind of describe it.
Well, it's a substance that helps speed up a chemical reaction.
But it doesn't participate in the reaction except
no,
in
just like a gatekeeper or something like that.
Yeah, sort of. And people have catalytic converters.
So you don't use up the catalyst.
Right. People have catalytic converters in their cars.
Yeah.
And what happens is the unburned hydrocarbons and carbon monoxide and stuff like that hits that catalytic converter, which, by the way, is made of platinum.
Yeah.
And with a little extra oxygen in there, what it does is it burns that
gas.
Which is why the catalytic converters get hot. It's also, because it's platinum, why they're expensive. Here we're talking about rhodium, but you're talking about capturing carbon dioxide and making it into fuel. So this again is that cycle that we've mentioned a bunch of times in different contexts of you burn the fuel, you make carbon dioxide. You take the carbon dioxide, you make it back into fuel. You have to power this somehow. And
you got to use something like solar or wind, or else you're
you power it at nighttime wind rates, which means that somebody pays you to do this.
Well, nice if you can get it.
If you can get it, that's right.
This particular thing is just a laboratory thing right now.
Yes.
This is the future, though.
But
this is what people are looking at for the future.
And there are places where they're already building pilot plants for similar kinds of operations, not dependent on rhodium, but similar operations.
There's a lot of people working on this stuff.
The Navy has been doing this. They say that they have technology.
We've talked about this.
Yeah, would make it possible to make aviation fuel, home heating oil.
It's cheaper to make the aviation fuel at sea with their own nuclear power than it is to bring a tanker in.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And if we did it on land, we could do it for $1 a gallon, which means that the whole oil and gas industry is superfluous and obsolete.
Well, I think the marketplace will determine that.
Yes, I think the marketplace will determine
I think the marketplace is determining it as we speak.
Which is why it was necessary for them to take over the Congress of the United States, because, it
was going too fast.
It was going too fast. They wanted to delay it. Okay. Our next item is from Power Magazine.
SDG&E, and he's going to tell you what that is.
I will.
Unveils the world's largest lithium-ion storage battery.
For now.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
California utility SDG&E, which is San Diego Gas and Electric, put into service the largest lithium-ion storage battery in the world, wrapping up a fast-track procurement process that began less than a year ago. The 30-megawatt, 120-megawatt-hour system is part of an expedited response by the state to the loss of the Aliso Canyon natural gas facility, storage facility.
The biggie, that was the big one.
This was the one where the
gas kept coming. They couldn't shut it off.
They were putting gas into an abandoned oil well.
Yeah.
They were pumping that gas underground. It was being stored at something like 3,500 pounds per square inch.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, until something way underground broke.
Something gave way,
and they had rocks flying out of a hole in the ground because they were being pushed out by natural gas. They're very lucky that thing didn't catch fire.
Oh yeah.
That would have been quite a fire.
There's something a little interesting here. These are lithium-ion storage batteries.
Yep.
Lithium-ion batteries are the batteries you use in your cell phone.
That's right.
I have not seen any big lithium-ion batteries.
Well, these are made up of little batteries.
They put a whole bunch of little... We're talking about a whole bunch. We're talking about thousands
of little batteries. Yeah.
Well, in this particular case, there's about 20-foot shipping containers.
Yeah.
Consisting this storage facility.
Yep.
400,000 individual cells packed together in separate modules inside the container structures.
Wow. This is a big enough battery that you take Brattleboro, which has a population of 12,000.
They would power Brattleboro for 4 hours.
For 4 hours? I'm sorry, 120 megawatt hours? That'd power Brattleboro for 5 days.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, they're talking about keeping a much larger number of people. But
I think I got the 4 hours is for this anticipated loan.
That's right.
They're expecting 20,000 homes.
That's right.
For 4 hours.
Yeah, and when you think about
Brattleboro does not have 20,000 homes.
When you think about it, solar power, comes on during the daytime. How do you have power at night? Because the peak load is from morning until 9 o'clock at night or so. And for those last few hours, you need storage, or you need a natural gas peaking plant or something like that. And, baseload power is a really inflexible way of doing things. Really inflexible.
Well, it was the way in the last century.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the way anymore.
No, it's not.
And we will touch base on a new kind of utility that's doing exactly this.
We will indeed. Okay, but we are up to an article from the Albany Times-Union.
One quick takeaway that I forgot. This is the company AES.
Yeah.
The cost of battery storage systems for AES has fallen 85% since AES first started this work.
Which was how long?
2009.
So it's fallen 85% in 8 years.
Yeah.
And I looked up AES, and these storage batteries are something like $100 per kilowatt hour.
That's a good price.
Yeah, which, just for people who don't understand this is not the price of the electricity.
No.
This is like...
this is the price of storage.
This is the price of the thing you're storing the electricity in, and you're going to put electricity in, and you're going to take it out, and you're going to put it in, and you're going to take it out. And in a lithium-ion battery, you're going to be able to do that about 5,000 times. So the cost of a kilowatt hour of storage is going to be very high. The batteries that I've got at home cost about $500 per kilowatt hour.
Okay.
And
they're good batteries.
They're good batteries. They're very inexpensive batteries. But if you want to do something really amazing, take a look at the hearing aid batteries and see how much they cost. I mean, we're talking about thousands. Anyway, the thing that I read about 18 months ago was when battery technology develops to the point where it hits $275 per kilowatt hour, it's going to be disruptive. Well, we're not at 275, we're at 100. This is disruptive. This is like 50% or less of what it was a year ago.
Well, for 100 years, nobody did anything to batteries.
Yeah.
Nothing had changed.
Yeah.
Nickel, the battery in your car more or less existed 100 years before the car started even using it. In the last 10 years, there's been more progress in batteries than has happened for the previous 100.
1,000.
I won't go as far as 1,000.
Well, they knew about electricity in ancient Greece. They knew that if you rubbed amber with a cloth, it would do funny things.
Well, they have found artifacts
that look like batteries.
Apparently were batteries.
Yeah. Anyway, we could talk about that forever, but we've got to get on to our next article, which is the Albany Times-Union.
Albany, how clever.
How clever.
New York pension fund puts ExxonMobil on notice over climate change.
Well, these people in New York have been having trouble with ExxonMobil forever. New York State Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli is again pushing for ExxonMobil to disclose how climate change will impact its corporate bottom line. He is going after ExxonMobil.
He's the investor.
Yeah, he's going after ExxonMobil because he wants to know how climate change is going to change the price of ExxonMobil stock. He voiced a concern that Exxon has not ensured its resilience in a lower carbon future. The state pension fund has invested in ExxonMobil valued at $973.6 million.
Wouldn't they just round it to $1 billion?
Well, it's pretty close. And actually, if the stock goes up, it could easily go over $1 billion.
Yeah.
But he's worried about this stock going down. And
yeah, because he thinks they weren't being, how would you say it, honest?
Honest. And that Rex Tillerson pulled a stunt that should have been brought up by people when he was being considered for Secretary of State, which is, Mr. Tillerson, why did you tell ExxonMobil stockholders that they would not have to worry about stranded assets?
I think that's come up in the news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they stranded their tar sands assets to the tune of 3.6 billion barrels of oil. We're talking $200 billion worth of oil. That sounds like a stranded asset to me.
Pretty stranded, yeah.
Of course, it's tar sands oil, so it wasn't really worth that much. It was probably worth a tenth of that amount. But $20 billion is, Okay, should we go on?
Yeah, we got a picture here.
We have a picture, and this is Sunday, February 26th, we've arrived at.
Yeah, we're up to Sunday already.
And this is a picture of Manchester, Ohio, which is down in southern Ohio on the Ohio River. What do you got for a title?
A small Ohio town counts on Trump to stave off plant closures.
Counts on Trump. Wow. Okay, Manchester, Ohio is a mass of closed storefronts with a couple of restaurants and a bar. Its 2,000 residents rely on 2 coal-burning power plants to provide jobs and keep the local economy afloat. Both are closing in 2018, and the closest town with available work is an hour away.
This is interesting because this town is right between 2 power plants.
Yeah.
And there's nothing else. There's no other
Nothing
work.
Else there.
And if these guys close, the people there are out of luck. They got to drive. The best they can do is drive an hour.
Or find a way to make money locally.
Well, that would be a good idea.
Yeah.
That was probably going to wind up what they're going to have to do. But right now, they supported Trump. Trump campaigned there.
Yes.
And he promised he'd save them. And
yeah.
I don't think he can.
Yeah, we'll find out. And it's going to be interesting to see that Mitch McConnell, who is the leader of the Senate, comes from Kentucky, and he supported Donald Trump because Donald Trump said, we will resurrect the coal jobs. And Donald Trump has no more hope, I don't think, of resurrecting coal jobs than he has of traveling to Mars and back.
Well, we've talked about this extensively.
This guy is... The
It's
utilities
too expensive.
Yeah, the utilities are saying...
But it's been happening for a long time.
Yeah, the utilities are saying we're going to close down these coal-burning power plants regardless of what Trump says. And DTE, which is I think the biggest utility in Michigan, said we don't care what Trump is going to do. We're going to close the plants.
Yeah.
This is not a matter of saying we need subsidies. This is a matter of saying we are closing these plants because we've got better ways of doing things.
Well, we've talked about that. It's cheaper to close the plants than it is to keep them running.
We talked about a new coal-burning plant in Belgium several months ago.
Open.
It had opened. It was a year and a half old, and it was
3 weeks.
Yeah, it opened and then it closed because it wasn't going to be able to make money, no matter what happened with market conditions.
Well, it's sad that this is happening here in America, but there is an alternative. I mean, jobs are popping up.
Yes,
and we'll talk about that.
Yes,
it might even be the next item.
Okay, Colorado Public Radio is the next item. That's not the next.
We are going to be talking about.
We're going to be talking about jobs, but
budget cuts would hurt research and business opportunities.
Right. For 40 years, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory has conducted unique scientific research and worked with industry to make solar sources such as solar, wind, and biofuels increasingly big parts of America's energy supply. But the Trump administration has roughly 1,700 NREL employees wondering what's ahead. And of course, he's going to want to close them down.
So their job is in jeopardy.
Their jobs are in jeopardy, and they are the ones that the fossil fuels industry is blaming for their, among the people, they're blaming for their woes.
Yeah. It's politics.
It's politics. And, you know, so the people in Ohio are going to go out of business, and the people in Golden, Colorado are going to go out of business, and everybody will be out of business, and Donald Trump
Until we talk about, what's his name, Musk.
Musk?
Yeah.
Okay.
Senior moment here.
Yeah.
Here's a quick takeaway. When you look at the renewables, it's very clear that we see a huge uptrend in jobs created out of clean or advanced energy technologies, which is what these guys are doing.
Yes, that's right.
So the increase in jobs is higher than in any other advanced energy technology.
Yeah, and they are making jobs faster than jobs are being lost elsewhere. And what could those people...
Well, that's a good point.
What could those people in Manchester, Ohio do? Well, they have an asset that I wonder if they're even thinking about it, and that is the electrical connections for 2 big coal-burning power plants. And you can make money if you've got those.
Well, we've talked about that in regard to Yankee.
That's right.
And a few other places as well.
That's right.
The infrastructure's there.
Yeah. And you can do something.
It's an expensive infrastructure.
That's right. And you can do something if you've got that infrastructure.
Well, Hinsdale's doing something about it. They're putting up a huge solar farm.
And you know what they should do? They should take that site at Vermont Yankee and say, we're going to build a battery bank here.
That would make some sense.
And then,
that would make a lot of sense.
And then what you do is you have 3 communities.
You heard it here, folks.
Yeah. you have Hinsdale and Vernon and Brattleboro, and each one of those 3 communities brings something to the table that is an important part of this. Hinsdale brings a site for a 65 megawatt solar farm. Vernon brings the site for the battery storage that solar farm could do.
Well, there's also a hydro plant in Vernon.
Yes, and Brattleboro brings to the table its citizens who need the electricity. You build a microgrid out of those 3 communities and any other communities around that can fit into it. And
you heard it here, folks.
You could have quite an operation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hope people are looking at this.
And then, you know, I mean, that puts you in a position where you can say, okay, you have a business and you want to make sure you've got power, you can do it here. Okay, we should keep going or we're going to be running over. Our next item is from Monday, February 27th, Web India.
Renewable energy can complement India's power demand for the next 7 to 8 years.
Renewable energy will fill the demand for power in India for the next 7 to 8 years. Is there a picture?
I think it's the next. Is it? Is
no,
the next one?
That's the next one where that picture is.
It's a bunch of
it'll be coming
windmills.
soon. Yes, it'll be coming soon.
It doesn't matter whether the windmills are in India or in China or what.
Okay. According to an estimate by the Energy and Resource Institute, power produced by renewable energy resources will increase from 5.6% to 34% of the Indian market by 2030, whereas production share of coal-based energy will decline from its present 73% to 56%. And I will bet you that in 2030, coal in India will produce much, much less than 50%.
Well, I wouldn't take the bet.
Yeah.
A massive change will be seen in the combined estimate of the 2 sources of power, that's renewables versus coal. Mm-hmm. The nation will not feel the need for new coal plants to meet the new demand.
So basically they're saying we will not build new coal plants.
They're not saying that, but they're certainly implied.
Yeah. And China's doing the same thing. Their production of coal in China went down almost 10% last year.
I'm not at all surprised. Matter of fact, I think we've talked about that.
Our next item is from Renew Economy, and that wind farm
is that picture there.
in Australia.
Wind, solar, and hydro grid cheapest option for Australia.
A new study by energy experts from the Australian National University suggests that a 100% renewable energy electric grid with 90% of the power coming from wind and solar will be a less expensive future option than a coal or gas-fired network in Australia. Most of the current fleet of coal generators is due to retire before 2030.
That's interesting because coal is big in Australia.
It is. We should keep going.
There's a quick takeaway here. It's kind of buried in this article, but they're looking to put up a lot of pumped hydro.
Yes.
In Western Australia.
Yes.
To save that energy.
Yes. Pumped hydro is a fairly inexpensive way of saving power. Our next item is from NJ Spotlight, which is a New Jersey publication.
Yeah. PSEG, still looking for subsidies to help keep nuclear fleet afloat.
Everybody's got his hand out. With electricity prices depressed, Public Service Enterprise Group, based in Newark, New Jersey, has been quietly lobbying policyholders, they don't want anybody to know, certainly not the citizens, to help its nuclear plants, much the same way New York has approved subsidies to keep its reactors going. PSEG, which owns 3 units in South Jersey, is in discussions with policymakers. Now, they've got one plant, Oyster Creek, which is already scheduled to shut down. Mm-hmm. So it's not.
They're a big utility. PSEG covers most of New Jersey.
It is a big utility, and they are converting a lot of their stuff to renewable. But they want everybody wants a subsidy. You can be conservative until you can be conservative and say, I don't want the government to put any money into this until it's money that will come to you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
This is buried into this article. But PSEG is clearly raising the rhetoric. This is saber rattling, trying to shake subsidies for the nuclear fleet. It needs to be fixed or those plants will be closed.
You'll close the plants?
So they're trying to scare everybody.
Yeah, they are. Okay, our next item is from Tuesday, February 28th, and it comes from The Guardian.
Got a picture on this.
There we go. Yeah. This is severe dislocation. Go ahead.
Shell's 1991 warning. Climate changing at a faster rate than at any time since the end of the ice
Shell
age.
Oil made a video on climate change in 1991.
Yeah, and nobody saw it.
Oil giant Shell's far-sighted 1991 film entitled Climate of Concern set out crystal clarity how the world was warming and that serious consequences would well result. It said climate change was happening, quote, at a rate faster than at any time since the end of the Ice Age, change too fast, perhaps for life to adapt without severe dislocation, end quote. What do you suppose they did about it? Buried the film.
Yeah. The picture, I'll bring the picture back up again.
Okay.
This is a real picture. This is really happening.
Yes, this is Bangladesh.
Bangladesh is built on very low land.
Yes, the whole country.
The whole country is very close to this.
Yeah.
This wasn't a flood. This is just like normal high tide.
Well, they'll have this in Miami.
There's going to be a lot. Yes, Miami.
That's right.
There's going to be a lot of dislocation because of this.
Yes, there will be. Okay, our next item is from Clean Technica.
Let's see what else. Did I have anything else? Well, I have, but we talked about it already.
Yeah.
From Clean Technica. This is the opposite of what is happening down there in Ohio.
Yes.
Tesla to hire 54% more gigafactory workers than first estimated. This is going to be the largest factory in the world.
Yes, even without these 54% more. Tesla will end up hiring about 54% more workers for the Gigafactory project than was initially supposed, according to the executive director of the Nevada Governor's Office of Economic Development. Initial estimates were that there would be 6,500 jobs that would be created by the Gigafactory project. Now the forecast is for more than 10,000. 10,000 jobs in a desert in Nevada. How do you deal with that?
Buses.
Buses. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if Elon Musk put in a train.
I wouldn't either, you know. He's
creative.
Creative enough.
Yeah.
Just a quick takeaway.
Yep.
Tesla currently employs around 30,000 plus people in the United States.
Really?
That's what the article said. Yep.
Okay, from the Natural Resources Defense Council, we have this.
100% clean electricity for California.
Wow. Legislation to require all California electricity providers to supply power generated 100% from renewable resources such as wind and solar by 2045 has been introduced by Senate President Kevin De Leon as Senate Bill 584. Current standards require 33% of renewable power by 2020 and 50% by 2030. You know, I want to point out on this, Vermont has a goal of 90% of its energy from carbon-free sources, renewables, by 2050.
Yeah.
But this goal is not quite comparable to that as apples to apples, because this is electric power. Our goal here includes everything, heat and transportation.
That's a significant difference.
It's a significant
Very
difference.
significant
Yes.
difference.
I don't know what California is going to do about heat and transportation.
One takeaway here is wind and solar are now the lowest cost options for new electricity supply in California.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me
They're
at all.
the lowest cost options for new electricity supply everywhere in the United States, almost.
Almost, yeah.
Okay, we're up to Wednesday, March 1st.
We got a picture.
Yes, we have a picture of a power plant. Let's put up this power plant. There's the power plant. This is from Power Magazine.
HECO. Well, we'll find out in a second who HECO is.
Yes, we will.
Tests virtual power plant in Hawaii.
Okay, the Hawaiian Electric Company, HECO, and technology service company STEM Incorporated have successfully tested nearly 1 megawatt of energy storage systems at 29 commercial sites on Oahu. The company said the system is a, quote, virtual power plant, end quote, controlled by a computer. It is providing better real-time grid operations, according to HECO.
Well, this is new out-of-the-box thinking.
Yes.
I mean, they're looking at the loads.
Yes.
They're measuring the loads.
Yep.
They're looking at the supply.
Yep.
They're matching one with the other, and it's all being done by a laptop.
That's right.
Well, it's not really a laptop.
I don't know, but I think a laptop could do that.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
You know, I mean, the first computers that the first microcomputer I worked with probably had about 1/10,000th of the amount of memory that thing had. It had no disk drives. Okay.
My first computer had 64K.
Mine had 16.
16K.
Yes, and it stored its storage was a cassette tape player.
Yep, I had one of them too, right.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, now this is going back to Australia. I mentioned this already, and this now an article about it. Pumped hydro storage could secure 100% renewable energy for Australia.
Yep, this is from Clean Technica. A study published by the Australian National University claims that pumped storage could be used to build a secure and cheap Australian electricity grid with 100% renewable energy resources. The 100% renewable energy grid would rely primarily on solar and wind, supported by off-river pumped hydro storage. Now, this is not exactly the same thing that we just talked about earlier.
Which uses a river.
Yeah, this is.
They're building these things self-supporting. There's a pond over here and a pond over there.
Yeah,
and
one of them
they move them back and forth.
There, you have two ponds that are in abandoned mines that are at different altitudes.
Yeah, and
so
that's working.
You just pump water from one to the other and back again,
and nobody even knows it's there.
Yeah, you know. So anyway, that's from Clean Technica. Our next item is from Press TV.
China coal consumption falls by nearly 5%.
You know, I'm every time I think about China, I'm amazed. China has managed to reduce its coal consumption for the third straight year as the energy-hungry country struggles to reduce its dependency on the heavily polluting fuel. According to a report from the National Bureau of Statistics, coal consumption fell at an annual rate of 4.7% in 2016. Coal production fell even more, by 9%.
Well, one of the things that's moving the politics in China is the fact that you can see this pollution.
Yeah.
They have some terrible smog problems
They have
in the big cities.
Yes.
And we've talked about that. We've
Yes,
shown
indeed.
pictures of it.
And I've read that there are approximately 4,000 people dying in China every day.
We talked about that last week.
Every day.
We use that same number.
Ooh.
Ooh.
And, you know, I mean, this is really awful. The Chinese are having to learn about environmentalism, which is something that we're going to have to relearn, you know, because Donald Trump is undoing all the things that people, you know, those socialists like Theodore Roosevelt and Richard Nixon, you know, I mean, who would have thought that it would take a conservative Republican to get rid of the wackadoodle ideas of Earth Day? Are you kidding me? Clean Water Act? Well, Donald Trump is not a conservative Republican, and the Congress we've got is not traditional Republican. Anyway, that was from Press TV. And now we're up to our last item, which is from vtdigger.org.
Joint venture has IBM tackling renewable energies grid effects.
Yes, this is a picture of the Lowell Mountain wind farm.
Let me pull that up.
Pull it up. Pull it up.
Here we go.
There you go. Kind of a pretty picture. Okay, Vermont Electric Power and IBM announced a new venture that will have the computer giant analyzing weather and electric meter data to anticipate conditions on the grid, as increasing reliance on wind and solar energy makes that important. The effort is predicted to save Vermonters money, possibly through smart grid technology. And really, it is smart grid.
Oh, yeah.
We could be talking about virtual power plants in Vermont, and in fact, they're probably
this sort of is a kind of thing that now Vermont Electric Power controls the grid in Vermont. Basically, they run the transmission lines.
Right.
Okay, so they're plugging in through the utilities to the smart meters.
Right.
And they're reading the demand from the smart meters.
Right.
That's what the whole purpose of smart meters is.
We should probably, since we've got about a few minutes, we should probably describe to the viewers what a virtual power plant is. Because people don't get this. You know, you start talking about, I remember when I started working as a computer engineer,
yeah,
you know, I did computer programming. That's what I did. I was doing very advanced computer programming. I've got patents in computer programming. But, you know, that's what I did. And somebody asked my mother what I did for a living, and my mother said, he makes software. And my mother had no idea what that meant. You know, this was what, 40 years ago?
Yeah.
And he makes software. And the woman who was asking her just thought the whole idea of software was like vaporware. You know, we used to call stuff vaporware. If it was not going to produce, it was vaporware.
Okay.
Smoke and mirrors. And, you know, I actually felt that kind of tug to think of a virtual power plant as vaporware the first time I heard about it. You know,
okay.
And I thought, what is this all about? Well, okay, in the traditional box, you've got a baseload power plant that just chugs out power 24/7. And people think that's sufficient, but it isn't.
Yeah.
Because in that box, the base load is the minimum load that the area will need. That's why it's called the base load.
Right.
And anything that comes in addition to that, you've got to have the load coming from some sort of plant.
You've got to find a source for that. And it could be expensive.
It could be expensive. A peaking power plant is a typical kind of thing that is used, and the power from a peaking power plant could be 35 cents a kilowatt hour. So when a utility is buying that peaking power, it's paying more than the ratepayers pay for electricity. Well, when we had the Vermont Yankee nuclear plant built just down the river, 25 miles down the river from that, they put in a pumped storage facility in order to be that extra power plant that was needed when the demand was high.
That's basically what pumped storage was doing.
That's right.
Yep.
And what they did was they provided two things. one of which was a place to dump electricity
at night when nobody
wanted it, because Vermont Yankee could not turn down. This is not like a tea kettle where
you don't turn it on and off.
No. And the other was a way to get storage onto the grid when it was needed. So basically it was a huge battery.
It made sense.
Yeah. Now, what happens here is that we've got a new paradigm, and the new paradigm has solar power, and it has wind power, and it has hydropower.
It's got whatever the sources of power are.
It's got biomass, which may be biogas in Vermont. There's a fair amount of biogas in Vermont. There's going to be more. And that's just taking stuff that would otherwise be a pollutant and turning it into electric power and stuff that's not a pollutant. And there's a whole bunch of geothermal is another one, which we're probably not going to develop in Vermont. But there's a bunch of different things, and these things can be distributed so that, for example, people can have solar power on their roofs, which provides power to the grid. And then in addition to that, you've got loads. Back when
it was vary all day long.
Yeah, back when Vermont Yankee was the source of power for Vermont, or southern Vermont anyway. There used to be power schemes where you could get your power at a lower rate at night than you got it during the daytime.
Yeah.
And one way to do this, which was much more practical than that in terms of the technology of the time, was to say, okay, we'll provide you with electric power. The utility would do this. We'll provide you with electric power if you have a meter that turns off your hot water system.
Well, that's
during
one
the
of
daytime.
The possibilities with smart meters.
Yeah, but you don't need a smart meter for this. The hot water system just goes off during the daytime. It's on at night, off during the day.
Well, there used to be a rate structure that took exactly that. You had two meters on your house.
That's right. And I had one that was 1 meter, but the meter had a thing in it that said this line is not going to be used during these hours.
Okay.
And no, actually it was 2 meters.
You had 2 meters.
Yeah, and it was, but one of the meters had a timing thing on it that would shut the meter off.
And when a guy came and read your meter, he adjusted the time.
He adjusted the time because every time there was a power outage, it would go.
It would stop.
It would stop, and then next thing you know, the hot water heater is only coming on during the daytime, which is not what you want. Anyway, there's lots of loads that you can shift to nighttime. You can operate your dryer so that it runs at night. Yeah, I was just going to say,
you don't have to dry your clothes during the time they need air conditioning.
Yeah. And there's other things like that. The water heater is one.
So you give the utility permission to do this.
That's right. And what happens is that when you do that, and you consider big industrial companies doing exactly the same thing.
They can do stuff like that too.
You have that little laptop that says you can turn on now, you turn off now, you can turn on now, and it'll have many, many, many resources, and it'll have many, many, many loads.
Yep.
And you can get far, far better power in terms of the quality, in terms of the constant quality of the power from these various variable resources all working together than you could using baseload power.
Well, this computer can adjust by the second.
That's right.
I mean,
and the batteries, if you're using battery backup, the battery comes on
immediately.
Where the peaking power plant is like a jet engine. It takes about 5 minutes.
Somebody's got to turn it on.
Somebody's got to turn it on. So the way that I look at it is this. It is intuitively obvious that you need baseload power from traditional power sources to ensure that when you throw a switch in your kitchen at 2 o'clock in the morning, the lights come on. That's intuitively obvious. It was intuitively obvious to Isabella that the world was flat.
There's still people believing that.
Yes, there are. So I think we should say,
well, we still got a little bit of time. There's some interesting thing about this.
Oh, okay.
Apparently IBM
has
been thinking about doing this for a long time.
A lot of people
And
have.
IBM already owns what's called the Weather Company. You ever hear of that?
Okay.
Well, it's 2 television channels, Weather.com and Weather Underground.
Okay.
So they know what's going on with the weather.
Yes.
And coupled with that, 94% of Vermonters already have a smart meter on their home. So these guys are anticipating this. And what they also, and this is accidental, I think, they got a fiber optic cable running from border to border. So these guys can communicate instantly.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next time, or more accurately, you will see us, we hope.